GameStop.com proudly presents a podcast beyond your experience, beyond your imagination, the Dune Cast, with your hosts, Joe Tavano and Rod Johnson, featuring news, analysis, and discussion of everything in Frank Herbert's Dune universe and beyond. Welcome back to the Dune Cast. I am Joe Tavano, and joining me as always is my co-host, Rod Johnson. How you doing, man?
Man, I am doing great. So much Dune stuff happening, and we were talking off air. We've both been busy at different times, and it's been difficult, but we're back. We're going to try and get on a schedule here and get Dunecast episodes to you on a more regular basis, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, it's been a while. We came on in January and said, yeah, we're coming back. We're going to be getting regular episodes. And, well, I had a baby, and Rod had to redo his roof, and he was in school, and all sorts of things, and life kind of blew up on us. But I don't want to get to belabor it too much, but we are really, really excited for the next phase of the Dune Cast and this show. And we're going to switch things up a little bit. I think that we're going to be doing much more frequent episodes. We may not be doing full book episodes. We're going to be probably breaking up into chunks just so we can get a little bit more frequency with the episode postings, and you can listen to them in part 1, part 2, part 3, and there's so much more to talk about too. We have, for the first time ever, we have Dune news coming at us that's brand new with these new films that are coming on. And that's right, I said films, not one but two, and who knows how many more from Denis Villeneuve, as well as, game announcements and comic announcements and all sorts of things coming from the Herbert family. So it is really a very exciting time to be a Dune fan.
Yeah, Brian keeps teasing out new stuff all the time. So,
yeah.
I'm excited for a board game. I've got a board game group, and I've already informed them that as soon as that game comes out, that will be the game we play.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for this one. I'm not a huge tabletop person. I love tabletop. I just need to get my crew together over here in Boston and get some people ready, because I am playing this Dune game. We're going to be covering it and reviewing it. I am so excited for everything going on in the world of Dune now, and I just have to say, we are so lucky to have a guy like Brian Herbert, who is just doing an amazing job telling us fans what's going on. You can look on Facebook and look on Twitter, and he's telling you where the drafts are, how they're reviewing them. It's just amazing how hands-on and how in-depth he's able to be with fans right now, and just so open to answering as many questions as he possibly can answer. So very, very cool.
Yeah, he has been doing a great job with I've interacted with him a couple times, and I've seen, any questions about the movie, and you'll see, 30, 40 questions, and he does his best to answer every one. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool. If you've got questions and you see him on there, he's happy to talk Dune.
He is, and if he can't answer it, he's very respectful about it, but it's all for the best. He's trying to make sure that when things are ready, they'll be announced in due time, and that's kind of where we are right now with the Dune production, and it's just really exciting. It's an exciting time because the script is nearing completion, pre-production is in full swing, and it's now time to start talking casting. We already have our Paul in
yes, we do.
Yeah, Timothée Chalamet. So very exciting there.
I've heard a lot of good things about him, but I have not seen any of his films yet, and I need to do that now because I want to.
Yeah. I
want to get a good look at this young man and see what I think about. But everything I've read from people that are familiar with him think that this is a great casting.
Yeah, I mean, I think he looks the part. He has a very young look, but at the same time, a wise look too. And he's not so young that he can't grow into the part in future films as well. I can see this this young man being, in part 1 maybe looking a little more youthful, and maybe in part 2 looking more mature. And as far as Dune Messiah goes, and Children of Dune, spoiler alert, I can see him growing into this role quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great. And I think he has a more grounded, he just seems to have a more grounded look than I think what some people might have been expecting as well. He looks like an actual person and not a movie star.
Yeah, I think he has a great look. Like you said, I think he's 21 or 22, if I remember correctly, but he does have a much younger look to him.
Yeah.
Which in the books, I think Paul was 15, if I remember correctly, when they went to Dune.
Yes, that's where he started, and then years passed, and he grew into a man. So there's quite a bit there, and then obviously I think Dune Messiah is about 12 years after that too. So you have a guy approaching his early 30s there. So I think he's gonna have to probably play up to that, but I think he can do it. Chalamet has been he's been on a roll. He's been in a bunch of Oscar-nominated films recently. Call Me by Your Name, Lady Bird as well, a fantastic movie. I haven't seen Call Me by Your Name yet, but my oldest daughter says it is fantastic. And Lady Bird was unbelievable. I watched that recently, and it's definitely a great film. Coming of age film. So not necessarily sci-fi, not necessarily like a Dune style film, but definitely a great indie film that worth watching as well.
I'll have to put that one on my list then. And well, it's on my list because like I said, I want to get a look at this kid and see
what
he looks
right?
like.
You want to check it out.
Yeah, see what I think he's going to bring. And like I said, everything I've heard is good, but got to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm really excited because now the Dune fans are all starting to talk about their epic casting, and obviously it's usually not who you expect in these casting roles. The fan casting is never going to always play out like that, with a few exceptions here and there, of course. But some
of them, they get all the big name actors, and you're like, no. Yeah. I guess this is why it's called epic fan casting, because that's not going to happen. It's
true. Over on the Dunecast Discord server, over at the at RetroZap on Discord, we're having tons of conversation on that every single day, and you guys are absolutely welcome. It's an open community, and you're welcome to join that and start talking Dune as well. We have some great people talking in there daily, so it's pretty cool. You guys should absolutely join. And we're just having a good time. We're talking about everything that's going on in the past, the present, the future. So it's cool, and I think the fan casting has been a lot of fun to go back and forth on. So I don't know. There's one that I keep on saying that people don't seem to really, they're not glomming onto it too much, but bear with me here. So
all right,
Stilgar, okay?
Yeah.
Stilgar is one that I think that you need a person of some gravitas, right? You need a strong role. You need a person who can definitely have some physicality to them. You need someone who can also kind of have that command respect as well, and be able to stand tall and proud. You need a person who's very physically capable, not too old. You don't want someone who's a senior citizen, but you also don't want someone who's a spring chicken either. You need a man. You need a person in the prime of manhood, so to speak. So maybe late 30s, early 40s, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm saying Tom Hardy. I'm saying Tom Hardy is Stilgar.
See, I've read that about you, and I had my Stilgar casting that nobody's really taken to.
What's that?
I've had Naveen Andrews, famous from Lost.
So that's a great one. I like that too for totally different reasons. Okay, so I'm thinking Tom Hardy. I'm thinking like not necessarily Bane, but I'm thinking more like who he was in like Inception. How he looks in like Venom trailer without obviously the suit on. Yeah. But Naveen Andrews, now that's a totally different perspective. So you have more of definitely the same age range, right? You have the gravitas. You definitely have a person who can be very physical, strong, but at the same time command that sort of presence of a a siege leader, right? I think that's really all there in Naveen Andrews. I think so. I think Naveen Andrews is also really good casting for Stilgar. Some others we had here, some people were saying, Baron Harkonnen. We had Brendan Gleeson was a good idea. We had John Goodman. I mean, I think people are kind of gravitating toward just large actors. I'm going to throw this one out there. I want to throw this one out there, and this is really out of left field. What if Baron Harkonnen, in all his grotesqueness and his massive obesity, what if there is no one alive that could humanly play the part correctly, as Herbert maybe envisioned it? What if you take the magic of special effects, Industrial Light and Magic, for example, Weta Workshop, Imaginarium, and you make a fully realized CG character, much like Supreme Leader Snoke? Okay? What if you did that for Baron Harkonnen?
I mean, I think to do him properly, you almost have to.
You almost have to.
The way he's described, and I don't know any actor that would want to play that role, to be honest. Yeah, we're gonna cover you, and we're gonna make you look really big, and we're gonna cover you in boils, and you're not even gonna be able to walk. You're gonna be suspended around.
Yeah, I mean that's just the beginning of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, there's just nothing good about playing that role.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. I mean, because he should be more revolting than Jabba the Hutt. He should be something when you first see him on screen, you gasp like, "Oh my God, what is that?" Like it should be that, but also at the same time, maybe a little freaky, maybe a little freaked out, maybe a little scared of his presence as well. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that, and I think that you can achieve that with a CG character and a performance capture, instead of maybe trying to do more of a traditional casting. Yeah, so that's kind of where my head is at with that. But who knows? Maybe we'll go a totally different way and they'll make it much more realized. I'm not sure.
I do have one other casting that I've really been a fan of, like, that I think would be a great one.
Okay.
And that is Cheney.
Yes.
Hannah John Kamen.
Who is this?
That the sci-fi show Killjoys, and then she was in Ready Player One.
Okay, let me check this out. Hannah John Kamen. Okay.
K-A-M-E.
Okay, here we go.
I think she's got a great look.
Wow. She's beautiful.
Yeah.
Look at those eyes.
Yeah, can you imagine them all blue?
I mean, you don't really have to go too far. They're so striking already. Look at this. Yeah, that's a Cheney right there. Tell me of your homeworld, Uso. Come on.
All
right.
When they first started announcing this movie, I was like, I don't know why. She popped into my head right away. Like, that would be a great Cheney.
I think this is perfect.
She plays kind of like a warrior. I haven't been. Well, I think I gave up after season 1 of Killjoys, but her character in there is very much BA fighter.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you where I've seen her. She was also Ghost in Ant-Man and the Wasp more recently.
Oh, see, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, great! It was a lot of fun. Really was. So, she can be seen there, and she definitely has the physicality. She's wearing something that could resemble a still suit as well. So, very, very cool there. So I think that, this is really good casting. Great job. Great job with this one.
Yeah, Denis, call me. I got a couple other ideas, but those are my two main ones.
Yeah, Brian, we know you're listening, so I think that was a pretty brilliant idea on Rod's part. Wow. So I feel like there's so much to talk about, but what don't we know? We know that the movie is going to be 2 movies. We know Timothée Chalamet is going to be starring as Paul. We know that there is a board game in the works. It looks amazing. I mean, this is going to be a full-on tabletop experience, and it's really, really exciting.
I'm happy for that. I do have one of the old board games, and I don't play it because it's still in plastic, and I cannot bring myself to open it.
You should probably keep that in there.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, for for all the collectors out there, now is the time. Now is the time to grab what you want to grab. If you've been kind of waiting to maybe check out some of those action figures, or waiting to pull the trigger on an early edition, I'd do it. I'd do it sooner than later, because when this movie inevitably becomes an epic hit, all of this stuff is going to be in very high demand to an entirely new generation of Dune fans, which will be fantastic. But for the collector, it might be harder to find. It might be more expensive to chase. So
yeah. I've been trying to up my collection lately. I got the board game. I've got one of the computer games still in plastic. Got a Chris knife.
You got a pretty cool fan-made Chris knife. That's very cool. I have the Dune Encyclopedia, which is pretty awesome. I have a very early edition of Dune. I'm looking for the action figures produced for the '84 movie. That's kind of my big chase right now. Hard to find. They can get pricey. They can get pricey, and they're hard to find. But I'm no stranger to action figure collecting. If you ever listen to my other show, Brews and Blasters, that talks Star Wars stuff. So it's definitely something I'm interested in. So I think that's going to be something I'm going to go after. Yeah, and we'll see where it goes. But that's even more exciting too. Think about all of the new merchandise that's going to be created around this film and around the Dune franchise as it is resurrected in a lot of ways into popular culture.
Yeah, I mean, the Dune fans have always been out there. There's and it's funny. There's the different groups. There's the Frank Herbert purists. And it's funny. It's kind of like Star Wars. You have the prequels and you have the original trilogy, and you have the younger generation. They enjoy the prequels more. And so there's the younger generation. I talk to a lot of the fans, and they love Brian stuff, and they're actually crazier about Brian stuff than Frank's stuff. And then there's people where it's like, it's Dune. Let me read it.
Yeah, totally.
Let me devour it. It's Dune. And so, man, it's going to be fun to have just like all these different age groups all coming together again, because it's been just this little small clique in the sci-fi community. The hardcore nerds is what I always get called when I tell people I'm a big Dune fan. They're like, "Oh, you're one of those nerds."
I've never had more people try and talk me out of reading a series than people tried to talk me out of reading Dune my entire life.
Really?
Yeah, like people are like, oh, because it's so complex. And I was just talking to people who really weren't interested in reading a deep and complex novel. But then I read it, and it changes everything. And I'm like, this is where I've always wanted to be. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it all went. And that's just so funny to me. So, I mean, it's really exciting because, it really was not a niche fan group, but certainly one that has been waiting for its time in the sun, maybe too long.
Yeah, and with the advent of social media, there's Facebook groups on there now, there's Twitter accounts, and so when social media really started taking off and you could find these groups, you're like, oh, there are other people like me.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there's a lot of people and those people are wrong. But I don't know if it's just they're intimidated by it or what. But, Game of Thrones was the same way for a long time. And then the TV show came out, and then now it's this huge runaway hit.
Yeah.
And, how many people would have never read those books had it not been for that HBO show?
Oh, millions. And there are people who only know Dune as the 80s movie, the weird 80s movie that they watched once, or they watch late at night when they're on substances or something because it's so freaky. Yeah. And that's really all how they've only ever engaged with Dune, as this weird thing that from the 80s, right? This David Lynch thing. And unpopular opinion here. I did speak about this on the Dunecast Twitter account. It is time to let the 84 movie go in a lot of ways. It's time to let that be a piece of Dune history be an important part of how we all visualize many of the things in Dune, but it is also time to let it go, because we don't want the 84 movie to color our expectations of what Mr. Villeneuve is doing with his vision of Dune. Because
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
I think, and it's funny because people, they get upset. Oh, there's the weirding modules and the heart plugs, and they get upset about this thing. And then when you're like, well, it was what it was, and we had it, and we enjoyed it, but we got this new one, so let's focus on the new one. And people are like, well, how dare you write off the 1984?
Exactly.
It's like you were just bashing it.
Yeah, like how can you... it's so easy to let it go. I mean, because it is only one interpretation of a story, and admittedly a flawed one, one that the Herbert estate has recognized as flawed, one that the director has recognized as flawed. It is weird, it is cool, it is something that I love, but it's time to let it be a part of the past as we look forward. And I'm putting all of those geek websites on notice, all of them. Do not put another news story on your site and then attach a screenshot from the 84 film. Don't do it anymore. Let's let that go.
You got Timothy, you can do that. You got Denis.
Yeah.
You can put his, as more casting gets, as they cast Naveen for Stilgar, you can use his picture. There's Hannah's Chaney, you can her picture.
There are book covers, there is concept art, there is so much visual material you can use with Dune, but you don't need to gravitate towards the 84 film every single time. Gotta let it go. No one's talking about the 2000-2003 miniseries in the same way. No one's doing screenshots from that, and no one's doing concept art from the Jodorowsky film either. They're not attaching that to every single news story. We have to let the Lynch version just become a part of history and move forward in our expectations of what we could see. We have no idea what a sandworm is going to look like. We have no idea.
Other than amazing. I don't.
Yeah, it's going to blow my mind. I know that much, but we don't know. We don't know what a third stage guild navigator is going to look like. Not a clue. Not a clue.
Yeah. Or a CH.
No. What is a CH? What is a Fremen going to look like? Not a clue. Right?
What's a still suit going to look like? Hopefully something that I can easily cosplay.
Ornithopters. What are we doing? It's probably going to be much closer to the novel than we've ever seen before. Because
I think the technology is there. If you have to do the CGI to make it work, it looks better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had CGI in 84, but it wasn't as good. No,
not at all. And you don't hire a guy like Denis Villeneuve to not make something that's going to blow your mind. Look at what he's done. It speaks for itself. In terms of staggering science fiction vision. So it's really, really exciting. All right, let's get started with our Heretics of Dune discussion. One that has been a long time coming, and we're really excited to get started and dig into it, because we have read and reread and reread and reread this novel over the past year and a half, way too many times, and I got to apologize to Rod for that, because I think he's consumed Heretics of Dune probably more than maybe any Dune fan has ever done.
I wouldn't say more than any Dune fan. There's some people that have been through that series quite a few times that just awe me with their dedication.
I will say, though, it is probably one of the fewest read Dune sequels and the fewest reread Dune sequels. I think that after you leave God Emperor of Dune, the subsequent Herbert novels become a little bit different. They go into different directions, and I don't know if after reading it the first time, people are likely to reread it as much, and it's a shame. It's actually a crime against the novel itself, because there is a lot of layers to Heretics of Dune that I don't think people really appreciate as much as they could.
The first time I read it, it was kind of jarring how much more action was in this book.
Sure.
Because it just, the first couple books, the first 4 books, there is such minimal action.
Yeah.
And this one, Miles and, the Tleilax, I believe there's just so much more fighting being described.
There's a lot more. It's more kinetic, I would say. More people moving around. Not a lot of explanation, though. The book is in a study in watching what people are doing, but not understanding why they're doing it for a long period of time. It's really unbelievable, and it takes a genius to kind of lay something out as methodically as this. To see a plan envelop before you, but not really perceive all of its aspects until it's already done. So what I'm talking about is Taraz's plan to liberate the Bene Gesserit from its final trappings of Leto, liberate it from Dune itself, and liberate the galaxy, the known universe, from Dune by allowing it to be destroyed, and free humanity from its pure dependency on one planet, which is the fulfillment of the Golden Path that Leto had set out in a way that Leto himself would never have expected.
No, that ending is pretty jarring when you realize that, it was her plan all along.
Yeah.
Because there really isn't too many breadcrumbs left for that outcome.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like there was. I felt like, it was kind of like, wow, that was kind of shocking the first time.
Yeah, it kind of just... This book reads very interestingly. It reads very methodically at first. You're like, all right, so what's going on with this Gola? Who's trying to kill it? What's going on? And you're introduced to many new characters. You're introduced to a whole new universe. Let's not forget, this is 1,500 years after God Emperor of Dune, which in itself is close to 4,000 years after the events of Dune. So we're close to over 5,000 years after Paul came to Arrakis, which is
to put it in perspective is
ancient
the
Egypt.
Egyptians weren't they weren't even building their pyramids yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's really unbelievable.
I think I'm not great with history, but I think that was around 2000 BC.
Yeah.
Which would put it at 4,000 years ago. So another 1,000 years before that is what we're talking.
Right.
I mean, I know that lifespans are longer. For example, they talk about Miles is 300 years old, but these are just mythical characters at this point.
They're mythical epochs of time. And again, as Leto said, he is the first long-term thinker and planner. And this is the realization of that. This is the universe that Leto wanted. This is the universe that Leto built but never got to see. And that was by his design. Because he couldn't inhabit a universe like this. He couldn't exist in it because he was too powerful. It's really interesting. So just to back up a little bit, this was published in 1984, the same year that the movie came out. It's the longest Dune novel in the series to date at 480 pages. The original novel itself, Dune, was 412 in the first edition. There's virtually no information I could find about its development whatsoever. We don't have a lot about what Frank was thinking or doing while he was writing this, where he wanted to take the universe. There's just not much out there about Heretics of Dune.
No, there really is. I've even looked at the biography that Brian wrote, and there's not a lot of discussion.
Yeah, it seems like a footnote, but this book is not a footnote at all. Many critics in the past have considered it the weakest Dune novel, and I think they're wrong for a lot of reasons we'll get into over this episode and the next few. Because I don't think it's the weakest Dune novel. I think it's the least studied. I think that people devote a ton of time to the first book and to the third book and the fourth book, but this book, I think they just felt it was just a sequel of a sequel of a sequel of a sequel, and they didn't really pay it the attention that it deserved, because it's insanely complex. The story wraps around itself multiple times, and it's really the beginning of an entirely new trilogy, a new story set within the same universe that Herbert has built. So the expansion of themes is well beyond anything that really ties it to the first 4 books itself. The names are the same in a lot of ways, but the faces are all different, right? It's kind of
we get
like
a
that.
lot more too in this book. There's the Bene Tleilax, which they've been introduced, and the Bene Gesserit, of course, have been introduced.
Sure.
But you get a lot more of the inner workings of these groups now.
Yes. This book is...
Whereas before, they're background groups.
That's right, yeah. I mean, they really... the Bene Tleilax were only introduced in Dune Messiah, and there was scant little talked about them, aside from the fact that they were weird. They had a much different structure than the rest of humanity, and they purported to have created their own Kwisatz Haderach. That was it, really, what we knew about them. And they can also, bring people back from the dead in the form of Golas. So a lot has changed.
And they apparently love Duncan Idaho.
Yeah, they
yeah. There was the famine times.
So, yeah, a lot has changed since God Emperor of Dune. There were famine times, which Leto predicted. There was the scattering, which Leto predicted, where the rest of humanity went out into the unknown universe to divide and multiply and grow in new and unexpected ways, far beyond how prescience could ever predict it. A lack of prescience allowed it to be done so because it wasn't there to guide it in any one path. So all of this has happened before the novel started. And what you find are people actually, after they've scattered and they've formed new civilizations, untold, trillions of people living out there, they're returning back to the old empire. They're returning back to the old planets. And there are various reasons why. There's new technology, there are new customs, there are new people. I think is an apt thing to say. I mean, there are there are people who are unrecognizable as humans at this point. There are chairs that act like dogs, and dogs act like beds, and there has been very little war since Leto II, even though there has been so many different newness growing. And that's because of the Bene Gesserit, who has grown in influence beyond the scope of the past 4 novels.
Yeah, they are obviously back in control after being subjugated by Leto for all those years.
Right.
To where they were a shell of themselves, and now they're back.
Yeah, and
they're running the breeding program again. They're doing the Missionar Protectiva again. They're basically just manipulating people again. But
it's not really more of the same. It's much bigger. They have armies now. They command forces. It's less about acting in the shadows and manipulating leaders. They are the leaders now. They are the unifying force in humanity. That
it's like, they decided we're not letting that happen again.
Yeah, there is literally one thread line that ties humanity at all to one another, and that is the Bene Gesserit at this point. But even their reach has limits, and it ends at the scattering. The scattering is beyond Bene Gesserit, even though Bene Gesserit went out there. All people went out there. Bene Gesserit went out there, Bene Tleilax, Ixians, all of them. But what's coming back is much different, and each group is making. They're trying to figure out how to deal with that, right?
Yeah, and it's you start thinking, again, we're talking scopes of years. If Miles' tech is 300, so you're essentially talking 5-6 generations.
Sure.
That these people have been gone and they come back. That's a whole different society, whole different rules, whole different customs. Surprisingly, they all speak the same language.
Well, not all of them. I mean, it was pretty clear that the Honor Matres did speak a different language, but they have a very clipped form of I don't know of the language the Bene Gesserit speak, which I'm assuming is. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure what language that is spoken in the Dune universe as like the basic, right?
Well, you mentioned them, so we should probably talk about them a little bit. The Honored Matres come back, and it's almost like Piter was the twisted Mentat. They're almost like a twisted Bene Gesserit. They rule more by sexual addiction than anything else.
Yeah, addiction is the right word, I think.
And they didn't have the spice, so they've got some substitute that they've been using.
Yeah, it's some sort of like aggression amplifier that.
Yeah.
They just have different technology entirely, and they don't really know how it interacts with, spice use, and it's very, very interesting to see this conflict of cultures and societies interacting for the first time with one another, this sort of first contact, and that's what you're getting throughout this entire novel, as new planets and old planets renamed become focal points for all of this happening at once. These sort of melting pots that are mixing up all of these different cultures. So you have like Gedi Prime, it's all cleaned up and it's now called Gammu. And people from Caladan, which is now called Dan, they went to Gammu and rebuilt it after the famine times and the scattering, and they kicked out all the Harkonnens, and they built this whole society there, and it's become this real melting pot of all these different people coming to live there. And you don't really get a sense of that until later on in the novel, because all you see is the Bene Gesserit keep on Gammu for a long time. And then you find out, oh yeah, there's been a lot going on there, and it's almost entirely Honor Matre controlled by the end of the novel.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising when, like you said, when you get to the end of the novel to realize how much they've done and how much they control that planet now.
Yeah,
because it's not what you think at the beginning. At the beginning you think, like you said, you think the Bene Gesserit are ruling things and in charge again, and then you find out that these Honored Matres are quite the threat.
Yeah, you think that there's actually not a lot going on Gammu. You think it's just kind of like a quiet little backwater. There's a keep there, and everything is kind of serene, and the Bene Gesserit are in control of the planet. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And it's all happening underneath their noses, which, it says a lot about the Bene Gesserit itself and where they think they are in this new paradigm, which is very quickly disrupting the order of things in the old empire.
Well, the title of the book, The Heretics, we kind of led to believe that the Bene Gesserit all pretty much fall in line, and outside of Jessica, they all do what they're told. They obey the hierarchy. And then you find out, well, Jessica, she was a heretic. She was far from the only one. And it's just much more commonplace now. Like even Miles' mother wasn't supposed to train him in the Bene Gesserit ways, but she did.
Yeah.
And Shuang Yu, of course, is not happy about that, but
a heretic in her own right.
Yeah. Everybody's, and it's kind of become a running joke, like, oh, that person's a heretic. We refer to them as heretics, and Taraza's in charge, and people don't always agree with what she wants to do, whether it be the Gola Project or putting Odrade in charge, and it's interesting to see that this group is not the cohesive order that we are led to believe in earlier novels.
There is a lot of politics going on. There's a lot of fractured influence and ideas, and it is certainly much more of a frothing boil of power and ideas than it's ever been. And heretics.
Yeah, and Tara.
The theme. What were you going to say? I mean, Taraza herself is a heretic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and
but
she's holding the Bene Gesserit together barely. It seems like they're always one outburst away from being an open revolt.
Yeah. I mean, there are open revolts as Taraza, leads, in the first third of the novel. But I mean, Taraza herself could be considered the ultimate heretic by destroying the base of the Bene Gesserit power. She destroys Dune. I mean, what could be more heretical than that? I mean, the idea of heretics is scouted throughout the entire novel, because we haven't even got started on the priesthood of Rakis, which was formerly Arrakis and formerly, known as Dune. And what constitutes a heretic by the priesthood standards is far different than what you would call the priesthood and what you would call a heretic by the Bene Gesserit as well. So it's interesting there, and they essentially rule Rakis as a theocracy, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to have to deal with this bloated and hypocritical and inadequate rulers to such a once powerful and great seat of power that the Dune was.
Yeah, it's almost like an analogy for the Roman Empire back in the Middle Ages.
You think so? I mean, Middle Ages. I think you're right. Middle Ages is the right term. Yeah, I could see that quite a bit.
I think both. Well, we got the priesthood of Arrakis is obviously the Christian belief with the divided God, and then you have, the other belief that Leto was just a prophet, and so it's very thinly veiled analogies for Islam and Christianity, whereas Jesus is the Lord and Savior for the Christians, and he's in the Quran as one of the greatest prophets.
Yeah, what an interesting reading. I mean, that's all right there.
So I think, and Frank did so much studying of Middle Eastern culture and Islamic heritage, or the Islamic faith, that maybe I'm reading into it too much, but that's just, I don't see any other way to take that.
The only difference is in Dune. I think you're spot on. I think that's all there. And the beauty of Dune is that it's an atheist universe where there are no gods, except for the ones that are self-created. And B, the Church of the Divided God doesn't necessarily believe in something that doesn't exist, or I mean, they believe in the pearl of consciousness that is inside the worm, and it's obvious that it's there. It is there, and while at the same time, the Bene Gesserit believe in Leto II, the prophet, who is also there and also prophesized many things beyond his own death, which were discovered after his death, which is what you read in the chapter interludes in God Emperor of Dune. So there's so much to catch up on how Leto shaped this universe and continued to shape this universe, and through the prophecy that he had laid down. And it really, the musings on prescience in this book get much more abstract and much more interesting, I think, than they've ever been. And it took me a couple of readings to really think about this, but prescience has got to the point where it not only predicts what would happen, it defines what could happen and what will happen. And Leto was such a powerful presence in the universe that were he to predict it, it was almost the course had been set for it to happen. His mere thought of it or seeing it would allow it to happen. So the fact that we have reached the scope of his own prescience and we've gone past what he would predict is a dividing line inside this universe where there was only one way to actually free humanity from Leto, and that was to actually rid the entire universe of any semblance of him, any prediction, any awareness whatsoever, because even the awareness itself could generate its own sort of prophecy. And it's just fascinating how deep it goes, that those pearls of awareness could actually be dreaming, and in dreaming create and shape the future according to the predictions that were laid out thousands of years ago. Like wild stuff.
The prescience isn't featured nearly as much in this book, though.
No.
You know, at the end, of course, with Miles, but, you know, there isn't an Atreides that has the prescience.
If anything, the absence of prescience and, like, an anti-prescience is much more featured, and that comes in the form of no ships, which are really what enabled it's that that tipping point factor that changed everything in society and in human civilization at the time, because it allowed people to escape the trappings and the tracking of prescience, to be able to escape that and journey out into the universe without anyone knowing where they could go or how they would arrive there, and just escaping prescience in itself to allow and enable the scattering to be. So no ships are a huge development, and no chambers in themselves, because prescience was almost like a technology at this point. The guild had a monopoly on it. Spice has been it's been synthesized within the Tleilaxu Axlotl Tanks, which are finally revealed to be the Tleilaxu females, which is gruesome and insane and very Geigery, H.R. Geiger, in thinking about it. But yeah, which also, just to back up, I know we're kind of all over the place right now, but if spice can be made in a Tleilaxu Axlotl tank, which is a human body, what does that say about the relationship between man and worm if you can grow spice inside a human as well as in a worm? I mean, it almost leads to a some sort of origin that might be shared, a shared, like, evolutionary ancestor. Like, that's wild to think about.
Is it that, or are they just modifying the DNA enough to do that? Kind of like they've modified goat DNA to produce spider silk in its milk. They've done weird things.
Totally. I mean, I would think it's no coincidence that a human and Sandtro could merge to become what Leto became so easily. I mean, that doesn't really happen in nature too much. The two species could merge so well. Nothing like that had ever been done. So it just kind of started to lead me down this whole idea that maybe that there's something else to be said there about how humans and sandworm interact, and there might be more there that Herbert was playing with, because it seems like we're both able to create spice. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from that.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that is an interesting take, and it is there a shared ancestor? Or are they just fudging DNA? And then also, it kind of takes spice. It's still valuable, but it's taken the market and greatly deflated it.
It's crashed it.
And
yeah,
anybody can get their hands on it. It seems like there's no difference between this manufactured spice and what they're harvesting on Rakis.
It's fully synthesized. Yeah, fully.
And then it doesn't cause friction with the Rakis Priesthood, who would probably not be happy about all the spice being farmed and threatening the worms.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of more of like an ancestral thing to farm it from the worms themselves. But the true treasure of Rakis is no longer the spice itself. It's the worms themselves and their pearls of awareness. and their ability to, as Teraza figured out, to perhaps influence the scope of and the course of humanity. So it's something that even Leto would not have been able to predict, that his unwaking dream could actually send out enough prescience to shape the course of humanity. Fascinating stuff there. The other thing about no ships too, they are capable of faster than light travel without spice, due to Ixian technology. So the guild navigators no longer have a monopoly on space travel, and they can destroy entire planets. They have, little Death Stars inside them or something, I don't know. But they definitely have enough weaponry to take out planets.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is just an extension of Siona and her genetics.
Yeah.
The no ship, and the no ships were mentioned in God Emperor with the creation of Winori being done in a no chamber.
That's true.
So it was only a matter of time before they figured out a way to put it onto a ship.
Yeah, so they're massively powerful pieces of technology, far more than just a regular spaceship. And they form planetary defenses. They are used in attack. I would just love to see a Dune space battle. It sounds so cool. And there's a lot to be said for that. And there actually are some in this book. There are quite a few with Miles Tegg's protege Burzmali and what he does in this novel. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, let's talk about the characters of this book. I think it's probably a good idea to kind of talk about them before we get into the main plot of the book itself, which we might do in another episode. But I think if we start talking about and understanding the characters themselves, it kind of helps talk about the plot. So the first one I want to talk about is Shuang Yu, which is a hell of a name to write out. SCHWANGYU. You don't see it much. I love how Herbert has brought forward a multitude of different phonetic pronunciations, and just made them into something completely new. Anyways, she is the commander of the Bene Gesserit Gammu Keep. She leads a faction of Bene Gesserit who oppose the Reverend Mother Teraza and her Gola plan. I considered her heretic in her, very clear insubordination. She uses religion to control, in order that uses religion to control the masses. She's one that rails against the order itself. She openly disagrees with the Reverend Mother, which is something that is forbidden. She has worries. And
she's in charge of the Gola project.
Yeah,
despite the fact that she hates it.
Yeah, she's in charge of it, but being in charge of it allows her to also really worry about it as well. She's worried about messing with anything too close to Leto II, or the Tyrant as they call him. She doesn't want to create another Kwisatz Haderach, which literally started this whole series of events of 5,000 years of complete chaos. And from their perspective, I think that Shuang Yu represents the old ways and the order as it was, and not where it would be by the end of the book. She sees the open threat of the honor Matres from the Scattering as where the Bene Gesserit should be focusing their efforts, not on this Gola project, to which she doesn't even really have much of a clue about. But she's very much in disagreement of it. I don't know, Rod, anything else to say about Shuang Yu?
Duncan really hates her.
Yeah. The young Duncan Idaho definitely hates her. I at the beginning of the book, I thought she would be a much bigger character than she was. She's true blue Bene Gesserit, but not necessarily a huge factor in the book. Next one is I want to talk about is Lucilla, another Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother. She's an imprinter. She is of the Atreides bloodline, which doesn't necessarily mean prescience anymore. It could also mean anti-prescience, as in the I want to say Shiana, but it's not Shiana. It's what's her name from God Emperor Dune?
Siona.
From the Siona line. And her main job in this entire book is to bind the Gola to Darwi Odrade. Lucilla and Odrade are both Atreides descendants, and they kind of look alike, probably from the Atreides bloodline. So that's basically her job. She needs to sexually imprint him to Darwi Odrade, which is like, fall in love with him times 100, and to control the Gola itself. I don't know. Anything else on Lucilla?
She actually, like you said, Shuang Yu didn't have as large a role. I expected Lucilla to have a smaller role, and she ended up, of course, having quite a bigger role than I expected.
She had a bigger role, and she ended up, at odds, and her mission became at odds with other people in the plot in ways I did not expect at the outset. So, a very interesting character. One we're gonna have to talk about more as we get deeper into the plot. Let's talk about the Duncan Idaho Gola himself. So this is the 12th in a line of 11 that have been killed, mostly by the Tleilaxu themselves.
Which is kind of odd, that they killed them themselves.
Yeah. They're making them because they're being purchased, and then they're killing them. The 12th one...
But then you have to...
What's up?
And then you have to wonder what they're up to.
Yeah, which we get into. That's kind of the mystery at the outset of the novel. What are they doing? Why are they even working with the Bene Gesserit on this? Part of the plan is to bring this Duncan Idaho Gola to Rakis to effectively control the priesthood, I believe, would be the outset and the beginning of the plan, until they find out Shiana is actually a factor, and then things shift. Because I think the long game here is to control the worms, right? To control the Leto controlled the Leto awareness worms themselves. Through some power. I'm not sure. I don't know what they really think that a Duncan Idaho Gola will be able to do, but they kind of have some thoughts, right? They think that he might be able to pull it off, I guess.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that they do allow for the genetic modifying to make sure that this Duncan is up to speed with current human standards.
That's super interesting. Because a lot of description had gone into the earlier books that the people of the Dune time are much more physically acute and faster and stronger, and their nerves themselves have adapted and evolved past what we're able to do with our bodies. Prana Bindu training and all of that. So that has only kept on progressing. So 1,500 years is enough time that he needs to actually be modified to be up to speed with current people, or he'd be kind of like a slowpoke and a not really that physically adept in comparison. Won't be shooting the threes. No, they want him to be a LeBron James, not me on the court. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you see it. Nowadays, world records are getting broken all the time in track and field events, for example.
Oh, sure.
There was a time when they said the 4-minute mile would never be possible, and now how many people run them in the Olympics every 4 years?
Yeah, that's in a relatively short period of time. That's pretty cool. There's a lot to say here, but at the outset of the novel, this is who Duncan is. I guess they are trying in some ways to make a new Kwisatz Haderach, some sort of super being who can control the worms. I'm not sure what they had planned on doing. What would a union with Atreides' descendants actually produce from this Gola? It's interesting.
And they don't know because they call it the wild Atreides gene.
Yeah, it's very.
They're obviously worried about it. I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, but they talk about Darway and her offspring and how they've actually killed a couple of the offspring because they weren't sure what those genetics held.
I know. I mean, if you think about the Atreides bloodline, is the one that got away. It's the crown jewel in the Bene Gesserit plan over the millennia, but it's also the one that got away, and
it's the boogeyman one too.
It went nuts.
They're scared of it.
Yeah, they don't know. It's the one that's most powerful and least predictable, because prescience was just the beginning. So
yeah,
we learned more about that.
The wild Fremen genes that Chaney brought to the table.
Yeah, we learn much more about that later on in this novel as well. And I think it's really interesting that Herbert chose to manifest those wild Atreides genes in much different ways, which are really interesting. So, just to cap off where Duncan is at the beginning of the novel, he had already had an instructor and a Gyasa, which you really don't get into much, but this it's easy for the Bene Gesserit to love this Gola, and he's just a likable guy. I don't know. He's Duncan Idaho at this point has become, a legend, a religious figure, a person out of history, a person out of myth, and a person who is also keeps on being constantly revived to live in time immemorial, literally. So it's such a random. I love that Herbert chose a rather random character from the first novel to keep on invoking and make this real uber super being, and it's pretty interesting. But we get down to the real heart of it. The most heretical thing in this book is the idea of love, and it's a new thing for Herbert to tackle outside of the raw science and political maneuverings and historical musings. And where else would he go in an exploration of what makes us human than to delve into love, and how he chooses to express that and how he chooses to analyze that through these institutions that deem it heretical in this far-flung future is really fascinating. So
yeah, I mean, the Bene Gesserit are just absolutely terrified of love.
Yeah, they forbid it. It's in the way. It's an antiquated idea, and it's just something that seems completely indomitable in the human spirit. No matter if you're from the Scattering and you are looking to bind, and I'm using love and sex interchangeably here, just as different manifestations of the same primordial urge in all human beings, I guess we could say. Because Herbert gets into it. He gets into it in this novel. He gets he gets dirty. Let's just say. Yeah. But
I hate to make the joke again, but I make the joke to people. It's like, I don't know what happened to authors back then, but it seemed like they got to a point where they just a little dirtier. Asimov did it. Heinlein obviously did.
I don't think Heinlein was always there.
Yeah, Heinlein, but Asimov did it. In some of his novels, I'm like, well, this is a lot different than your earlier work.
Well, I think that these people are thinkers, and once they start exploring one facet of human nature, you eventually get around to other parts of human nature as well. And I think that Herbert had explored so much that he had to start getting into what defines us as human. And love is a major part of that. A major part of that. it's one that's least analyzed and definable in traditional terms. So it's really radical for a sci-fi book to tackle love in very abstract and strange ways, non-traditional ways that our society is definitely not used to looking at. So it's really interesting, but at the same time, there's so much commonality in the human experience. So I think that it's really a stroke of genius to get into it. And there was no need for Herbert to be salacious for its own sake. It was all done for a very to emphasize the humanity of it all, and I think that's something he took great care to do.
It was a difficult. I agree. I think he wasn't salacious about it, but
maybe he was trying to sell. I don't know. He's selling books, maybe, but I don't think he needed to resort to that to sell books either. Not in 1984 when Dune was effectively at its peak in the popular culture at the time.
Yeah. It did catch me off guard the first time reading it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was a lot in this book that caught me off guard the first time reading it. It's completely different. We mentioned it earlier. It's a completely different path that the Dune novels are going at this point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Dunecast this week. We are back. This is not a drill. We will be back very soon to keep on discussing Heretics of Dune. We're going to knock this one out, do a very deep dive over the next couple of episodes, and then keep on moving forward into Chapter House Dune and beyond. So there is plenty more to talk about. If you want to talk to us, you have any questions, you want to talk more about this novel or anything going on in the Dune universe, with the movies, with any news that's happening, you can just email us, dunecast@retrozap.com, DUNECAST@retrozap.com, and you can find us on Discord as well. Just go to retrozap.com, click on community, and you'll be taken right there. Rod, any final words?
No, I'm pretty excited to be talking Dune again with you. I'm excited to have the podcast back, and so much to talk about.
There is, and hold on, I want to cut you off.
No, I'm just like, I get a little overwhelmed sometimes, and I'm thinking, man, we got comics coming, we got board games coming, we've got movies coming.
Yeah,
new books all the time.
It's gonna be great, and we'll talk about it all next time on the Dunecast. Thanks, everyone.